In my previous video, we were able to cover the beginning parts of the Tensura Volume 22 light novel, so in continuation of my breakdown for the remaining parts, in today's video, let's break down the events that have occurred in Chapter 2. Again, if you don't want any spoilers for Volume 22 of the light novel, feel free to come back later after you have read the story for yourself. By the way, I now have channel memberships open, so if you enjoy my content and want to support me, feel free to join because there are several fun perks that you can have, like suggesting topics for me to cover, early access to videos, a personal badge on your name, and many more. Now then, Chapter 2 itself is called Time of Despair, which depicts the current situations at the Sorcerer's Dynasty Sarian and the battle at the Heaven's Tower between the defense force gathered by Luminous and IVARAGE's Cryptid army. So, to start with the former, after Jahil was repelled by Benimaru and Rumpai managed to briefly divert the attention of Milim, who was trying to destroy the Divine Tree, everyone in Sarian was still trying to recover their strength because having learned about the impending invasion from the Cryptids, as well as the defeat of Rumpai at the hands of Feltway, it meant that Milim and Feltway would soon be returning to destroy the Divine Tree. But that's not even the worst part. Since Ramorous' Labyrinth is currently being attacked by Vega's group, the Tempest reinforcements initially brought to Sarian by Benimaru were forced to return. And obviously, Sarian can expect help from Luminous as well because they are busy preparing to repel the Cryptids. Even Kigali and Tyr had left to hunt down Jahil. This ultimately left only Almacia, Sylvia, Leon, and Zelario, who might be able to at least defend against the incoming Milim and Feltway, because the remaining warriors in Sarian would just be fodder if they joined the fight. Milim and Feltway eventually arrived at the Divine Tree, so they immediately went into battle. Almacia, Sylvia, and Leon would use their superior speed to intercept Milim and keep her away from the Divine Tree as long as possible, while Zelario would be taking on Feltway. However, they were completely outmatched by Milim and Feltway respectively. Even with Almacia providing support magic, Sylvia and Leon's attacks still had no effect on Milim, while on Zelario's side, despite having more combat experience and skills than Feltway, all of his techniques were still easily countered. Luckily, they would soon receive help from Chloe, who had just appeared alongside Gaia to hopefully stop Milim's stampede, and this is probably my favorite moment of the entire volume, because I enjoy the way she uses her ultimate skill God of Space-Time Yogg-Sothoth against Milim here. To explain, Chloe was essentially synchronizing and transferring her future consciousness back to her current self, so whenever an attack fails, or she gets hit by something fatal from Milim, she can just share the information with herself. Though it's crazy that none of her abilities worked on Milim. Even her infinite imprisonment and absolute severance, which were capable of hurting Valdra, had no effect. But the worst and also funniest one was when Chloe tried to use an ability called Fatal Loss, a technique that accelerates the target's flow of time, essentially killing them by increasing the target's time until they exhaust their lifespan. Unfortunately, this only accelerated Milim's growth and caused her stampede to accumulate more power to the point that her Dragon Nova was enough to outright destroy the world. So obviously, Chloe returned to the past to avoid making this mistake. That said, I did have an issue with Chloe joining the battle abruptly, but it was mainly the way she was introduced because the arriving at the last second to save everyone trope has honestly been used so much by Fuse at this point, and even more so in this volume that it feels overdone and a lazy attempt to generate excitement. I mean, it literally happened in the next sequence where Valdra suddenly appears as well to help Chloe fight Milim, while allowing Almacia, Leon, and Sylvia to assist Zelario in fighting Feltway. Either way, another notable point from the sequence in Sarian will be learning some context on Feltway's twisted way of thinking. According to him, forcing his selfish convenience and willpower to take control of everyone was justified, since Zelario and the others were supposed to be his friends, meaning that Feltway's idea of friendship is those who blindly follow and affirm his every choice. But that's not all. We can see that Feltway is basically a spoiled brat, crying for the attention of Valdonava while complaining that he isn't appreciated and has been abandoned by his master, which really puts into perspective how delusional he has become. Zelario even pointed out that Feltway was the most favored by Valdonava. I mean, he was given a body that not only resembled Valdonava, but he was gifted Arc, one of the few Genesis grade weapons found in the Tensura series as well. Hell, Valdonava even left the protection and management of the various worlds he created, along with preventing the release of the world-destroying dragon IVARAGE to Feltway, which is already proof of how much he values Feltway, so I don't understand why he has such a skilled mindset. From a writing standpoint, I can understand why Fuse is trying to make Feltway as unlikable as possible, but it just seems a bit too inorganic, the way his character has devolved from a threatening presence to an outright crybaby. In any case, the perspective then switches to the Holy Empire of Lubelius. Less than a day after Luminous had just broadcasted a doomsday message to the world in the previous volume, everyone was now gathering near the border of the barren desert to prepare for the impending battle against IVARAGE and the Cryptids. Some were even teleported over by Valgrians such as the Magic Knights of Leon, who were led by the Silver Knight Elros along with Khan and Mizora, who were the subordinates of Misery and Rain respectively. Also, there were some familiar faces who were participating in the war as well, like Yom, Mira, and King Gazer, so once all the important figures individuals were gathered, Luminous held a meeting to discuss about their plans. They decided to deploy a 4-sided holy purification barrier placed at north, south, east, and west to completely surround the Heaven's Tower so that the number of cryptids pouring out from the passageway of the tower could be limited. And having agreed to the plan, we get a detailed lineup of their allocated forces, so starting at the northern side, the barrier will be maintained by landed attackers. But since the terrain here is quite narrow, they can only deploy a smaller force to reinforce them. This included Louis Valentine and Gunther, who will be leading the 400 Bloody Knights of Night Garden, alongside Adalman and Ghidorah, who will be leading 100 of the Black Numbers as well, in particular those who serve under Diablo. Then for the south, Lithus and Muran will be handling the barrier located here, and they will be supported by the Magic Knights led by Elros, Yom's own forces from the Farmanas Kingdom, and another 500 adventurers, heroes, and warriors from various countries who decided to follow Yom. Adding to this, 200 of the Black Numbers under Ultima's command along with Khan and Mizora would join as well. They even summoned 60 named Archdemons subordinates of Guy Crimson. Over at the eastern front, Arnold and Nikolaus are responsible for the barrier located here, and deployed to protect them were 300 of the Crusaders, 100 of the Imperial Guards from the Eastern Empire, and 200 members of the Black Numbers under the command of Shien, one of Tensura's subordinates. The group will be led by Hinata Sakaguchi with Kaguryo and Minette supporting her. Also, they are joined by Masaoki, which meant that Valgren and Venom were here as well to protect him. Meanwhile, Sarah and Frizz will be maintaining the western barrier, and because it's an open area, the largest force will be deployed here. For this side, 1,000 elite warriors of the Binding Chain Titans led by Dagura will be present, but the fighting power is not limited to them because Shion was Dagura's master and 100 of a Yomigari were also included. Furthermore, Glenda and Gregory were assigned here as well to command the human forces, comprised of 30 of the Lubalius Imperial Knights, 100 from the Musketeer Corps along with another 50 from the Suiran Mercenary Group, which were both organizations under the Three Drunk Sages. But aside from the 4 different battlefields, King Gazer and 500 of his Pegasus Knights will be covering the area defense, although if needed, they are ready to reinforce any of the locations. Also, Valgren has placed a parallel existence on each location to convey information from Luminous, who monitor the entire battlefield and provide resurrection magic to the fallen. And I actually enjoyed this part, seeing the preparation phase and the planning done by them was quite interesting. With that explained, Valgren teleported everyone to their designated locations at the Heaven's Tower, where sure enough, IVARAGE will soon appear with a cryptid army, and the first contact will be made on the eastern front, where she immediately releases a powerful flash of light that completely disintegrated most of the forces stationed here. Only Hinata, who had a premonition of the attack thanks to her ultimate skill Fortuna, and Masaoki, who was protected by Valgren, managed to survive. However, I did not like how the tension of the sequence was taken away. Because the Luminous simply activated a Sanctuary Resurrection to bring everyone back, it would have been so much better if Fuse just allowed everything to play out a bit longer to further reinforce how hopeless the situation was for the defenders, and showcase the terrifying powers of IVARAGE. Good thing Fuse made sure to at least show us the despair from the resurrected individuals, but honestly, I can't believe that Fuse is still so adamant about having no casualties in the story, which is by far the worst aspect about Tensura. But whatever, thanks to the rousing speech given by Kaguryo, all the disheartened warriors will regain their fighting spirit as they directed their murderous intent at the Cryptids and bravely resumed the fight. Thus, the battle for the survival of the Tensura world begins, with Cryptids engaging the defenders on all sides, and even though the situation will only be depicted in Chapter 3, I think it's better to include the explanation here. So to continue, thanks to the newly motivated defenders, the Eastern Front was able to barely hold on against the Cryptids. Hinata and Valgren were still trying to recover their strength after defending against IVARAGE's initial attack, and they were lucky that she chose to observe them instead of joining the battle. Also, since the Cryptids had no concept of cooperation, it was easy for the defenders to fight in groups and take them down together. Unfortunately, the worst case scenario would happen. IVARAGE decided to make a move as she performed a magic ritual that altered the appearance for most of the Cryptids, giving them humanoid forms. But not only that, she increased their intelligence as well. Some even adapted to use swordsmanship and tactics, which only made the battle more difficult as this would translate to the other battlefields. That said, over at the northern front, the scene was described to be a complete massacre, and it resembled a nightmare with the body parts and blood spatter of the Bloody Knights and Black Numbers scattered everywhere. That's because when the bird cryptid Habataki came out from the Heaven's Tower, it had used instant motion and its high speed to cut down everyone before they could even react. But Adama and Ghidorah were able to analyze the way the cryptid fought, so apart from the initial confusion, their forces have started to regroup as the Bloody Knights and Black Numbers were able to regenerate from their injuries. And I found the banter here to be quite funny, because Adama and Ghidorah were contemplating about ways to not kill Habataki so that they can capture and study the cryptid. It was only then they both decided to get serious, joining Louis and Gunther in fighting Habataki and the other cryptids that come through as well. Then in the west, the Chimera-type cryptid Kakeyashi will exit the Heaven's Tower with children that basically resemble Kakeyashi but just smaller in size. However, it seems that Kakeyashi wasn't interested in fighting. Instead, it was enjoying the view of the Cardinal World, and only the children were fighting the defenders. Although Shion, Gregory, Glenda and their forces were able to repel most of them. It was only then Kakeyashi finally stood out to release decomposing enzymes into the atmosphere, which turned into a poisonous gas lethal to every other living beings except for his children. Luckily, Glenda was able to sense the attack, so everyone managed to avoid the gas, although some of Shion's Yomigari were apparently dumb enough to actually inhale the poison. The result was all their internal organs became rotten and were now bleeding from every orifice found on their body. Sure, they might have immortality, but I think their regenerative capabilities should just make the experience much worse. Regardless, Shion was able to clean away the toxins with ultimate skill Susanoo, and the battle would continue. For the southern barrier, the fish-like cryptid Suimu and other flying cryptids that resemble the megalodons produced by Cryptids had appeared, but sensing something terrifying about to come, Ultima had Veyron order the human forces to stay behind the barrier, and her prediction came true. The parasites inhabiting Suimu were released to the surroundings, destroying everything in their path. So the remaining battle within the barrier were left to Ultima and the Black Numbers, since they can simply regenerate if hit by the parasites, but it doesn't mean the humans led by Yom can relax, because soon, another group of cryptids resembling insectas had appeared as well, so Yom's group was left to handle them. Having said that, chapter 2 ends, but apart from some issues I had with the writing and how Fuse kind of constantly relies on cheap tropes to add excitement or tension to scenarios, or sometimes taking it away as well, I still enjoyed it a lot because I'm always a sucker for some Chloe screen time, and not only that, more insight into Fatway's mental state was a nice addition. Also, even though I did not include the character exposition in my summary here, I did find a few of the character moments to be quite enjoyable, like the way Alessia, Sylvia and Leon were arguing about who is the stronger chosen hero between Ludra and Chloe, along with Yom's usual conversation with Grucius and Muran. Those were not only wholesome interactions but funny as well. In terms of pacing, chapter 2 definitely felt better to read as compared to chapter 1, although it's still not one of Fuse's best work. But yeah, this is a good point to stop for now, and what do you guys think of chapter 2 and volume 22 overall? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay updated and know when the follow-up video will come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.